8 months ago, we know and we knew that guys named Axelrod, Emanuel, and Durbin drew a district to elect Tammy Duckworth. Plain and simple. Now look, this is a lousy game. Republicans do it in other states. Democrats, whichever state party controls the state, they get to draw the map every 10 years. I wish we could find a better way to do it. I went to college in Iowa. You know what Iowa does every 10 years? They use a computer. They use a computer to figure out these districts. And their districts actually look like rectangles and even squares. But the Democrats control Illinois. So what they did here, which was so unique, is they didn't just draw this new 8th district for a Democrat. They went one big step further. Rahm Emanuel and Dick Durbin said again, we're going to try to get Tammy Duckworth elected again. They drew a district to elect her. They literally tried to draw every precinct into this district that she won when she lost to Peter Roskam 6 years ago. Silly me. I knew what I was getting into. And I just said that's not right. I live in McHenry. Helene and I live in McHenry. I love it in McHenry. Great area. They drew me into a district with another Republican, a freshman Republican named Randy Hultgren. And they said, run against each other. They just dared us to run against each other. And I thought about it, but at the end of the day, I said, that's not right. It's not right that somebody like Tammy Duckworth can have a district drawn for her, and it's not right that two Republicans be forced to run against each other, guaranteeing that one of us wouldn't get back to Washington. So I took this challenge out. And truth be told, after March, when Duckworth won her primary, polls were taken, I was easily 15 points down back in March, April. Good news. We've worked hard. A lot of people have worked hard. 2 polls were taken this week that showed we're 2 points up and 3 points up. Now, I don't know a lot about polls. All I tell everybody, my standard response is, Joe, Congressman Walsh, sometimes they call me other things. Where's the race at right now? I say what I've always said. It's a dead heat. It's close. And it's going to stay close. We've got 24 days to go. And the reason this race that includes towns of Bartlett and Carroll Stream and Elgin and Harpersville and South Barrington and Schaumburg and Palatine and Elk Grove, Bensonville, Itasca, Wooddale, Villa Park, Elmhurst, Addison, Bloomingdale. The reason this race is close has to do with a few reasons. One, I don't know any other congressional campaign in the state, maybe around the country, that since March, we've had live people making phone calls every day of the week, and we've had live people knocking on doors a good number of days every week. People in their 90s down to people in their teens. Folks, this is how I beat Melissa Bean 2 years ago. A grassroots, nothing fancier than a grassroots army of patriotic Americans who are scared to death that we're losing this great thing called America. And we've been out for months. Tammy Duckworth hasn't had that. The other reason this race is close, and I always say it has very little to do with me, and I believe that. It's why I don't talk a lot about me. The other reason this race is very close is because Tammy Duckworth made a big mistake a month ago when she was asked a question. I understand it was a difficult question to be asked, but she gave the wrong answer. She was asked on a radio show about a month ago, and then she said again on TV 3 weeks ago, Miss Duckworth, are we better off now than we were 4 years ago? Miss Duckworth, are we better off now than we were 4 years ago? And she said yes. And I said, you're kidding. We're paying twice what we paid 4 years ago for a gallon of gas. The value of our homes has fallen through the basement. The value of our savings has plummeted. We have less disposable income. Illinois became the leader in foreclosures, and more Americans are unemployed now, and we all know people who are struggling. For somebody, for any candidate, Republican or Democrat, to look you in the eyes this year and say we're better off tells me you're really out of touch. And it's not surprising. Last thing I'm going to say, and then we'll open it up. The reason Miss Duckworth thinks we're better off is because she just doesn't spend a lot of time here. Look, my campaign, we're driving a 1984 RV around the district. Every day I'm not in Washington, I am shaking hands at train stations, knocking on doors, doing this 100 times a day. I'm trying to meet every single voter in the district. And because I've done that, I've learned that we're not better off. I've talked to thousands of people who are struggling. I've talked to hundreds of people who literally cry when they're with me because life is so tough right now. Tammy Duckworth doesn't hear that because she's not here. She's raised a lot of money. Boy, I wish I raised the money she raised. Oh, boy. But she travels the country and raises a lot of money. And you know what? In a way, you can't blame her. Imagine if very powerful people handed you a district and said, you are going to be a congresswoman. She just doesn't feel like she has to be out here. We had the one debate last week. The one debate where she'll get in front of people with me was last week. She's turned down 13 debate invitations. She just doesn't want to go near me. More importantly, she doesn't want to go near you. And I'm a Republican, but I would say the same thing if I were running against a Republican. Nobody in this country this year should vote for any candidate that doesn't get in front of people and find out what's going on in your lives and tell you where they stand on issues. I have, like everybody in this room has, so much respect for Tammy Duckworth's service. In my book, anybody who's worn the uniform is a hero. End of story. To be elected a member of Congress, to try to become president, you've got to tell us where you stand on issues. And that's what we've been trying month after month after month. So, thank you all for coming out. There are no rules, Frank, you know, no rules at these things. Just try to respect each other. But you can ask me any question you want to ask about anything, or just opine about anything you want to opine about. And we've got coffee and donuts. Start. No, it's clearly an ongoing legal case. What I find most troubling is, the other night, I asked her point blank, and she lied about it. Can you imagine if Joe Walsh lied about something as blatant as that? This would be headline news in the Daily Herald for 2 weeks straight. But I find it very troubling. This is, you know, Blagojevich appointed her. Blagojevich had a history of using his office to advance his political causes. The fact that Miss Duckworth, who ran the Illinois VA herself, terminated one of these employees when all they did was report wrongdoing, illegal behavior, I find very, very troubling. And I hope, here's my hope, again, if this were Joe Walsh, you know the media would be looking into this every single day. My hope is that the media will now look into this, go down to Union County, and find out what the deal is.
Because that wasn't covered in the debate, that piece. I had to hear it from somebody who was closely known.
It was a question I asked Ms. Duckworth at the debate, and she denied it.
Sure.
the media then thankfully picked up the story, and I'm hopeful they're looking into it. What else, guys? Yes, ma'am.
In regards, I don't know if you're here, but in regards to Obamacare, I noticed that for me and a lot of my close friends and relatives who are medical, health, whatever reason, just find medical providers, nurses, health, buildings, getting their funds. I mean, I know with a person who did that, I had to deal with, but wanted to know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, here are my thoughts. If we can't repeal Obamacare, good luck finding a doctor in a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years. Love us all. Wake up. Listen to the people who matter in this country. Let me back up. We all matter. So there's Miss Duckworth again over there taping me. Hello, everywhere I go, she tapes me. We all matter. But why do people in Washington think they're the experts? Why don't we listen to the people who create jobs in this country and ask them how we create jobs? No, Washington does their own laws. This thing with Obamacare is right in front of us. Doctors are telling us they're leaving the profession because of Obamacare. They're fleeing the profession. So maybe there'll be one great day in the future where we'll all be on government-run health care, but nobody will find a doctor. That's where we're headed. Obamacare is funded right now, even before Obamacare, less and less doctors were taking Medicare and Medicaid patients because they're not getting paid. Obamacare is only going to make that worse by tenfold.
And I do know for a fact the medical providers are getting very scared.
They're scared to death, but they're acting with their feet. Folks, I got to tell you, doctors are leaving the profession. That should scare every man and woman in this country. Every one of us. What else, guys? Yes.
I just got a vent. I got to get something off my chest.
You came to the right place.
This administration has no value for life. We had that Operation Fast and Furious, in which President Barack Obama has apologized to every nation.
How long have you been working? That's my wife. Keep going.
He's apologized to every nation. He's never apologized to us. Earlier this week, in those hearings, they said yes, they had asked for more security. It was denied to them. And Joe Biden says, no, they never asked us. We didn't know about it or anything. And I just have zero confidence in this administration.
Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. And here's what I tell everybody. We could be here all day talking about the things that bother us when it comes to this president. But I don't want to spend all day doing it. I'd rather spend all day knocking on doors because we have 24 days to try to win. The objective right now should be to win on November 6th. I find it so troubling, this whole Libya Benghazi thing. I think when we finish a real investigation, it just scares me that we're going to find out that we know they had been asking for extra security. We know they had warnings. We know there were prior attacks. Look, is it going to be a surprise to any one of us that we were caught off guard? We were warned, we were caught off guard, and from the moment it happened, this administration's been covering its backside. And I think we're going to find that out. And I find that very troubling. It's like the administration hasn't been upfront with us. They kept pushing this crazy bill, right? They kept blaming this crazy bill and this spontaneous uprising to this bill. Hooey, we know that's not true. So yeah, it is very troublesome, which tells me I need to work even harder to try to put Mitt Romney in the White House. And I certainly need to work harder to try to win, because the last thing I want to do is give the Democrats control of Congress. Focus on the election right now.
Follow-up question.
Yes.
Your opponent says that you don't like Jews.
That I don't like what?
Jews.
Jewish people?
Yes.
I'm married to one.
Do you like
that's, boy, you know, people have said so many things about me. Some make me laugh. I've probably been the most outspoken pro-Israel Republican in Congress. I introduced a bill last year giving Israel the right to annex Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. I think this president is probably the worst friend Israel's ever had. He's not Israel's friend. My opponent, Tammy Duckworth, gets major money from a group called J Street, which is an anti-Israel, anti-Jewish organization. So no. Thankfully, you have a lot of pro-Israel people in Congress who are there to make up for the fact that this president is not at all Israel's friend. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer.
What else? Yes, sir.
One couple questions. One kind of follows on the healthcare. For example, I'm self-employed, so I have to get my own private healthcare insurance.
The system works against you.
Oh, it does. Every year, I get a bill from my annual increase from you guys. Oh, we're going to raise you another 10, 15%. You have a birthday. Oh, guess what? Happy birthday. You get increased again. You can get it reduced, but you have to go reapply every year to do it. I dread every year when I get that annual increase. I remember in 2008 when the financial crisis hit, my rates went up 20%. I based a caller and said, it must be nice to increase it by 20% when the whole economy's gone.
But it's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
It's only going to get worse.
Another thing too is I was watching last week on Channel 7, on Sunday. What I'm getting tired of is this whole entitlements, basically saying, well, we're going to protect everybody, basically to get the votes. The problem is everybody in this country has to realize, my dad's retired, my father-in-law's retired, but everybody in this country needs to feel the pain. We're all going to need to feel the pain, no matter what. Cuts in, whatever we're going to have, paying more taxes, whatever, we're all going to have to do it to get out of this hole. Another thing too is all these pensions. These pensions are ruining us. They're ruining this country. They're bringing us down.
Public sector.
The whole Chicago
Government
teachers
sector.
school strike the other couple weeks ago. All this stuff about we're entitled to this. No, you're not entitled to anything. You're entitled to do your job, go to work, do your job, be happy you get a paycheck.
You know,
The problem is that they don't want to be evaluated. Go into the real world. You get evaluated on your job every year to decide what kind of raise you get. Not this entitlement. I am getting sick and tired of it. These unions are ruining this country.
the problem, jump in.
How much do you think the government spends per year on these entitlement programs that are really from people that don't deserve it or are scamming the system or
Well,
waste of money?
we know there's a huge amount of waste, fraud, and abuse in virtually every government program. There's a huge amount of waste and fraud in Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. In fact, there was some big investigation 3 months ago that found something like $400 to $500 million of waste in Medicare, of fraud in Medicare, involving 107 Medicare government employees. So it's a problem, but it's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is what you're saying, which is it's time for this country to grow up. If we don't grow up as a country and pay our bills, we are going to crash. And you could argue that we're crashing already. You could argue that Illinois has already crashed. We've been living this way for so long, where as a nation, we've asked government to do more and more for all of us. And let's be honest. none of us have really called this into question. We've all let it get this way, right? And now we're at a point where we have nothing left to give. We're at a point where if we don't change Medicare, it's just going to disappear. That's one program. It'll disappear in about 8 years. It's almost comical watching Tammy Duckworth and other Democrats run around campaigning saying the Republicans are going to take away your Medicare. They want to change Medicare. If we don't change Medicare, it's gone. So to say don't do anything to it means to just let it die. That's just one government program. Social Security is about 12 years beyond that. Do you understand? Do you really understand? Because and I know we don't have any seniors in this room. What they're trying to do is scare seniors. I have yet to find the one senior who says, I don't care if Medicare's not going to be there for my kids. Don't you touch mine. I have yet to meet that senior. Yes, sir.
I think I might be that senior.
Oh, here we go.
Let me say a little something, Mr. Walsh. First of all, let me thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm not the world's greatest public speaker. For some reason, I'm damn sure going to vote for everything with a D by their name. My message to them, I'm voting your sorry ass out of office. Number one.
I've met. Okay. Go ahead.
I've heard year after year wealthy liberals talk about tax breaks for the wealthy. And Ted Kennedy is a good example. I've never seen them say my taxes are too low. I've never seen them giving money out of the goodness of their heart. Warren Buffett's been fighting a 10-year tax, $1 billion tax bill for 10 years, and he said people should pay more taxes. And I just got an audit on my 2010 taxes. It's a small amount, not enough to get a professional, but enough to put the squeeze on.
Yeah. You could take every dollar that every millionaire in this country makes, tax them at 100%, right? It might make liberals feel good, but do you understand that that won't do anything to the debt or the deficit?
But look, I might add that the Democrat Party, that wants to tax, they have the biggest tax cheats. Look at Charlie Rangel is a good example. Look at when Clinton era or some of these having people they rejected because of tax.
Well, but you also find a lot of wealthy people in both parties who, look, our tax code's a mess, right? It's really complicated, right? So the wealthier you are, you can hire accountants and lawyers and find every single loophole and deduction and come out paying hardly anything, okay? So to me, my answer is, because I'm not wealthy, my answer is simplify the code, give me one simple flat tax that every American can fill out on that. Okay? Every American, fill out on that, no deductions, no loopholes. See guys, you know what we do? And your politicians are terrible at it. We confuse and complicate everything. Here's the deal. Life is simple. The Democratic Party, as it is today, believes in government, big government, solving all our problems. And I have to say this. They believe it's their money. They don't believe it's your money, which is why they can take more and more of it. That's their philosophy. That's fine. I wish Obama and Duckworth would be honest and say that. But that's their philosophy. I come into Congress, my belief is totally different. I believe it's your money. And whether you're rich, middle income, poor, it doesn't matter to me. I want you all to keep more of what you make. It's your money. And the only way to do that, I think, is to simplify some sort of flat tax, simplify the code. I think, and I'm not going to dodge your other question, I'm just going to put this answer to it. The reason this has always been the most unique, greatest country in the history of the planet is because it's the only country that ever began with an idea. It's the only country that started based upon an idea. Freedom. So people historically from all over the world have come here to be free. I want that to continue. The fact that all sorts of diverse ethnicities come here can only add to the strength of America. As long as this country remains free. Now, I would argue we're losing a lot of our freedoms. We certainly don't get to keep as much of the money we make. We certainly now, we live in a country where, hang on to somebody, now you can be taxed for not buying something. And if you think that's not just the start, that's just the start. You know, when I hold town halls and I do things like this, undoubtedly, somebody from an Eastern European country who's been in this country for 15 or 20 years will come up to me and say, my God, do you know where you're going? Hey, America, do you know where you're going? I ran from that. Exactly. I ran from socialism. I ran from a dictator. I ran to freedom, and now I see my America going that way. They get it more than Americans do, because they've lived under it and they bleed it. This is where we're going, and we got to stop this. Yes, sir.
One thing, his thing about the population going down, another reason is expensive to have kids.
Yes.
You can't have 4 or 5 kids anymore. It's too expensive between
Unless
food,
you're on
clothing,
welfare.
health insurance, and
You
everything.
can have all you want.
But
Get a raise.
that's one of the problems
Yeah.
too. It's too expensive now.
We got to put this country to work. Yes, sir.
2 points. My name is Bruce Sucher. My background is in teaching constitutional history.
Oh, welcome. Enlighten us. Enlighten us.
First of all, I have to say to you that I think it's so awesome that you're here. You know, you're not in a stadium of 50,000 people. I wish somebody would fill this box.
Let the record show the congressman's pouring his own coffee. Keep going, my friend.
So, 2 points. So first of all, something you would all know, I was marching with Dan Catlak right behind Joe in the Labor Day parade.
Woo!
And at the end of the parade, there were about 30 people left. The parade was over on a side street, and our group had some musicians, so they were playing God Bless America. I got this picture of Joe standing there in shorts and t-shirt with his hand over his heart. This man loves America. Amen. Now, my constitutional point. I'm kind of a Jeffersonian Madison guy. You know, if you go back a couple hundred years, people weren't even sure they should have a federal government. You know, maybe the state should decide everything, but Jefferson said we need a federal government to declare war, to make treaties, and to solve conflicts between other states. But, I mean, I'm old-fashioned. I grew up in the 50s, Eisenhower times, and my understanding is that people elected were called public servants. I'm not sure if that's still true, but the word, you know, politics comes from the Greek poltis, which means to serve the people. And my understanding is that at the beginning of time, you know, government was there to serve the people. Whatever the needs were, that's the only thing government has to do. Today, it's the other way around. Government's telling us what we have to do. So thank God we elected, and I love Peter Roskam, but I wasn't upset that they moved me into Joe's district, because Peter's fine now. He actually ran against Tammy Duckworth once, so now it's Joe's turn. But I'm so grateful that I'm in your district.
Thank you. One quick point. And Peter's a great guy. He now is in a very safe Republican district, so he'll be fine. To your point, you and I are brothers. We have gotten so far away from what our founders envisioned. In Washington, both parties, they look at me like I'm from another planet. I went there and I said, I'm going to term limit myself. I'm only going to be there 6 years, because our founders believed it was just a temporary sacrifice. That anybody could be plucked off the farm, they go to D.C. for a little bit of time, they come back home and it's your turn. I said I was going to turn down my congressional health care and my congressional pension. I didn't want any benefits. Why should I have any benefits? And they looked at me like I was crazy. We have somehow got to get back to this notion of citizen legislators who don't go there, stay there forever, and somehow they always come out with more money. They always enrich themselves. We got to get back to what our founders envisioned. Yes, ma'am.
One last thing is, my husband and I, we have a lot of friends who are serving in Afghanistan right now, or they come home, some are bored. Maybe I can have an opportunity to help get
I've been to too many events in the last 2 months where I'm speaking to our boys and girls who have just come back. And you know what I do? I apologize. I apologize to them. I say, your government is doing a lousy job of taking care of you when you come back.
Here's my toast to them.
Yeah.
Everybody.
This is going to be a real epidemic unless we step up. Because so many of our men and women are surviving on the battlefield. They're coming back home wounded physically, mentally, and spiritually. And right now we are not investing the resources to help them adjust, and we have got to change that. Yes, ma'am.
I am a realtor and a homeowner here in Bartlett.
How the heck are you surviving?
Well, I'm barely, my income and my home values have gone down about 30-35%.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Here's my question. I mean, I'm thinking of selling my house to avoid because my taxes are so high, paying for not even a good school district. And I'm wondering, what can you do when you get elected, because you're going to get elected, to help us Illinois taxpayers, especially now with this Bloomington, with Chicago, we're all going to get stopped in something to try to tax you for nothing. And as a realtor, I'm thinking of selling my house and renting because I don't want to pay taxes, which is crazy. I worked hard all my life because of the benefits, and now I want to do that.
Nationwide, all of these problems are part of the fact that we're not working. I'll tell you what, gang, the next politician that stands in front of you and says the unemployment rate is 7.8 or 8.1%, pick up a donut, I don't have much of it, and throw it at him. The real unemployment rate in this country is between 15 and 19%, and you know what? It could be higher than that. Only your silly government doesn't count the people who quit looking. Only your silly government doesn't count those who are working part-time because they can't find full-time. So in D.C., that's what I'm focused on. When it comes to Illinois, I got to tell you something. People ask me constantly, what is America going to look like in 4 or 5 or 6 years if we don't get our act together? And everybody says Greece or Spain or Europe or any, and I say no. Illinois. Illinois. Oh, good. Illinois. Oh, and you should say, oh goodness. I was born and raised here. Barrington. Love this state. This state has already crashed. I don't know how it's going to recover. We have the worst employment in the country, the largest foreclosure crisis in the country, worst pension liability in the country, worst credit rating in the country. Can I stop?
Is it still like that?
No, they're leaving. Isn't that great? Every 10 minutes. Here's one, guys. Every 10 minutes, and it's gone down. So it's even worse. Somebody leaves Illinois. Somebody leaves Illinois. This has been going on for 15 years. The people leaving are the taxpayers, the homeowners, the doers, the business owners, the makers. They're running out of this state. This is one of the most expensive states to die in. We have one of the highest state death taxes. None of this is surprising. It's not going to change. Because let's go to politics. You don't just have one party. We've got one party that runs the state, but it's worse than that. You have one man who runs the state, a guy named Michael Madigan. So until that changes, Illinois will never change. Now, how's that going to change? Well, the problem is, and I say this as a Republican, we have a Republican Party in Illinois that is almost a joke. It's inept. It doesn't stand for anything. It hasn't. It's picked up the little crumbs that the Democrats have left it year after year. The Republican Party in this state has not stood for ideas like freedom, free markets, free enterprise, limited government for years. And so because there's no Republican Party, you can have one party dominate, one man dominate. If we don't change that, I mean, look, Tammy Duckworth's filming me. I'm a representative from the state of Illinois. Eventually, it's going to get to the point where you're going to say, and I'm going to say, I'm out of here. you're going to be part of those folks that just say, I'm done. Because if we're all leaving, who's left behind? The people dependent upon government. The people leaving, guys, are the taxpayers, the doers, the makers. They're going elsewhere where it's easier to start a business. It's easier to work. It's easier to keep more of the money you make. This is scary. Yes, ma'am. Where we are not. We are in a one-party corrupt state. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm Ted McCarron. I'm with the DeKalb County of Illinois Tea Party.
Welcome, Ted.
We enthusiastically support you at our Tea Party, even though we can't vote for you. I noticed
You could all move for 3 minutes if you wanted. If they really liked you.
Stephanie, but here's the thing. During the debate, I noticed that Tammy Duckworth kept slamming you for being responsive to the Tea Party. And what I wanted to say is that the Tea Party represents the Constitution of the United States and the values of the Founding Father. So Ms. Duckworth, listen to me. By him being responsive to the Tea Party, he is responsive to the Constitution of the U.S., which is far superior to the Marxist values of the president you follow. Now, I do have a question.
I can't talk.
I do have a question about Afghanistan. Okay, you said you wanted to withdraw. If there was a worst case scenario, the Taliban return al-Qaeda set up its camps, would you consider?
Yeah, I think we
Worst
can.
case scenario.
I think we can do that in a more nimble, efficient fashion than doing what we're doing now, which is trying to nation build. Yeah. But quickly to your point, the first time I was with Ms. Duckworth back in May, we sat down on a TV set together, and she called me a crackpot, and everybody who believes in limited government and freedom, crackpots and crackpot ideas. I don't know. Hey, my constitutional friend. Hey!
Yes, sir.
Was Jefferson a crackpot? Was Madison a crackpot? The people that started this country believed in freedom, limited government, individual responsibility, and free markets.
It's true.
Boy, if we've gotten to a point in this country where those are crackpot ideas, heaven help us. What else, folks? Yes, coming back here.
Yeah, question for you. After this election, would you consider running for governor for the state of Illinois?
Here's an honest answer. I can't stand politicians that are calculating and think about their next move. I'm going to give you a dead honest answer. All I know is I want to get reelected because there's still some good I want to do. I don't think a day beyond that.
Right.
Thank you. Boy, talk about running away from the question.
Yeah, I know you are.
Hey, it's wherever God sends me and us. Because I do believe, no matter what you call it, whether it's called the Tea Party movement, no matter what it is, this is the silent majority. This is, guys, most Republicans, independents, and a heck of a lot of Democrats quietly believe in these basic American ideals. Not all of them show up at Tea Party events and march and protest. But I'll tell you what, if we get this election wrong, look out. The silent majority is going to raise its head. Yes, sir.
In light of everything that you learned during the House Oversight Committee hearing on the Benghazi attack, yesterday, militants linked to al-Qaeda captured a Syrian air defense missile base. Is Obama's foreign policy blowing up right before our very eyes?
Yeah, you know, I think he just came into office. He bent over, he apologized, and he vowed to the entire Muslim world. He denied that we're at war against an evil that wants to kill us. Now, I don't want to invade countries, but I know enough to know there's an evil, radical strain of Islam around the world and here in America that's trying to kill Americans and destroy our way of life. You either fight that or you bow and apologize to it. And from day one, he's bowed and apologized to it, and that's emboldened our enemies. You combine that with the fact that in my lifetime, and this is near and dear to me, in my lifetime, this is the only president I've ever known who is not Israel's friend. How scary is that? How this tiny little democratic island in a sea of tyranny. And now we have a United States president who isn't standing with Israel. Absolutely, he's emboldened our enemies. Couple more, Drew? One more, Drew.
Certainly.
Congressman's starting to get the hook.
Tammy Duckworth said, you don't like Hispanics, was another charge that she made, that you're racist. And I just want to say, my name is Jesse Allen Eve. My mother and father are from Mexico. Congressman Walsh has always come to visit us. He's always listened to me for the last 2 years. And I, as an American of Hispanic descent, stand with Congressman Joe Walsh.
When I first met him, he told me he was Irish. And I bought it. Look, look, I had to make a decision right after I got elected. I made a promise before I got elected. Drew, I'm closing, okay? I'm getting a look. Thank you. I made a pledge before I got elected that if I got elected, I'd be the most accessible member of Congress. And I said that I was going to hold more town halls than any member of Congress, and I have. But I had to make a decision early on, because the minute I started to do these things, the cameras started to show up. And whenever cameras start to show up, politicians get scared. Because every single word I say can be used against me. This is why most congressmen don't do a lot of these. They're scared to death of the cameras. I made a decision early on, I'm not going to let it bother me. I'm going to tell you what's on my mind. I'm going to tell you what I believe. If that makes certain people angry, fine. If that means that Joe Walsh is going to be up on the YouTube all the time, fine. We don't have a lot of time. We really don't. We got an election or two to get this thing right, or we'll never get back to the country you and I believe.
So I have a point of order. I know you got to go, but my guess is that you probably haven't won any votes this year because everybody who's here is probably going to vote for you anyway. But what can we do in the next few weeks for you? What do you need to vote?
It's all hand-to-hand combat now. We're done discussing ideas, we're done debating. We've got 3 weeks, it's all about knocking on doors, making phone calls, sending emails, talking to every group you know, your church groups, your school groups, your cigar clubs, whatever. It's all about that now. The other side's doing it, that's what we've got to do. This is a race. This is a race. The most helpful thing you can do to me, for me, is spread the word. Say you met him. I met that guy Walsh. You know what? He's not like the media says. He's not crazy. He turned down all his benefits. He believes in terminals. And tell your neighbors, tell everybody you know about me. Spread the word. We have an office in Schaumburg. We're out knocking every day. We're making phone calls every day. Join us. Get a bumper sticker, get a yard sign. Mary Lou! Lock the door. Frank, lock the door. Don't let anybody leave without giving Mary Lou your email address so you get our stuff. Spread the word. That's it. We've got thousands of these. Come in and grab 100 and walk a neighborhood in our district. If you live in the district, walk your neighborhood. Last thing I'll say. I know we live in an age where you got to raise a lot of money. We'll have money. And you do all this fancy internet stuff. Do you know that studies show the best way, even in 2012, to still get a vote is when a neighbor knocks on a neighbor's door with a little note and a brochure and said, I met Walsh. He's a really good guy. He gets it. Your neighbor Steve. That is still